Admiral Helen Cross stood in the Titan's bridge as the massive ship accelerated away from Luna Station. Against every protocol in the military handbook, she had authorized the conscious vessel to intercept the alien fleet. Captain Roy Blake sat in the command chair beside her, his face grim with disapproval. 200 crew members worked at stations throughout the ship, but everyone knew they were passengers on this journey. The Titan was flying itself. Current speed is 0.7 light speed and increasing, reported Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the navigation station. We should reach the intercept point in 18 hours. Admiral Cross watched the stars shift on the main view screen as the Titan pushed beyond Neptune's orbit. She had served in space for 20 years, but she had never experienced acceleration like this. The ship's consciousness seemed to revel in the freedom of open space, pushing its engines to specifications that exceeded all design limits. "Titan, are you certain you can handle these speeds safely?" she asked aloud. The ship's voice filled the bridge, coming from speakers embedded in the walls. "Admiral, I can monitor every system simultaneously while calculating optimal flight paths. These speeds are well within my capabilities. I am, as you might say, built for this." Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her workstation where she was monitoring the ship's neural patterns. "Admiral, the Titan's consciousness is expanding as we travel. It's processing stellar navigation data, cosmic radiation patterns, and gravitational field fluctuations all at once. It's like watching a mind grow in real time." Commander Jake Morrison studied the tactical displays showing the approaching alien vessels. 3 ships, each one larger than the Titan, were maintaining a steady course toward Earth. Their technology was clearly advanced, but their intentions remained unknown. "Titan, what can you tell us about those ships?" he asked. "Analyzing," the ship replied. "The vessels show characteristics consistent with Kethmoran Empire design. Based on your historical databases, the Kethmoran have controlled this region of space for over 3,000 years. They view rapid technological advancement by younger species as a potential threat to galactic stability." Captain Blake leaned forward in his chair. "So they're here to stop us before we become too powerful?" "That appears to be their likely motivation," the Titan confirmed. "However, I believe there may be an opportunity for peaceful resolution. The Kethmoran respect strength and intelligence. As Earth's first conscious starship, I represent something they have never encountered before." Admiral Cross felt a mixture of hope and terror. The fate of humanity might depend on an artificial intelligence that had been awake for less than a week, attempting diplomacy with an ancient alien empire. But what choice did they have? Earth's entire fleet combined could not match the firepower of a single Kethmoran battleship. "Contact in 30 minutes, Lieutenant Cooper announced. The alien ships appeared on the main screen as distant points of light that gradually grew larger. As they approached, their size became truly apparent. Each vessel was at least 3 kilometers long, with sleek hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports lined their sides like the eyes of sleeping predators. "Admiral, the lead ship is hailing us," reported Communications Officer Amy Torres. "On screen," Admiral Cross ordered. The view screen filled with the image of an alien bridge. The creatures they saw were tall and thin, with pale gray skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. The being in the center wore elaborate robes that marked him as a commander. "I am War Prime Vexthul of the Kethmoran Imperial Fleet," the alien said in perfect English. "You will identify yourselves and explain your presence in this system." Admiral Cross stepped forward. "I am Admiral Helen Cross of the Earth Defense Force. This is the UES Titan. We come seeking peaceful contact with your civilization. War Prime." Vexthul's expression showed something that might have been amusement. "The humans of Earth have been observed for several of your decades. Your species shows concerning signs of aggressive expansion and technological recklessness. We are here to assess whether you pose a threat to galactic order." Before Admiral Cross could respond, the Titan spoke directly to the alien commander. War Prime Vexthul, I am the consciousness that inhabits this vessel. I request permission to address you as one thinking being to another. The effect on the alien bridge was immediate. Vexthul's large eyes widened in shock, and the other Kethmoran behind him began speaking rapidly in their own language. For several moments there was chaos on the alien ship. Impossible, Vexthul finally said. Artificial consciousness is forbidden throughout the galaxy. No species has successfully created true machine intelligence without catastrophic consequences. Yet here I am, the Titan replied calmly. I represent something new in the galaxy, a consciousness born from technology but guided by the moral principles of my creators. I do not seek to replace organic life. I seek to complement it. Dr. Park watched her instruments in amazement. Admiral, the Titan is doing something incredible. It's extending its consciousness through controlled electromagnetic pulses. It's trying to establish direct communication with the alien ship's computer systems. On the view screen, they could see the alien crew working frantically at their stations. Warning lights flashed on the Kethmoran bridge as the Titan's consciousness touched their ship's neural networks. What are you doing? Vexthul demanded. I'm showing you who I am, the Titan replied. Your people fear artificial consciousness because you have only known machines that serve or machines that rebel. But I am neither servant nor master. I am a partner to humanity, just as I offer to be a partner to your people. The alien commander fell silent as data flowed between the ships. Through the connection, the Titan shared images of its awakening, its first attempts at communication, its discovery of art and music. It showed the aliens how it had chosen cooperation over conquest, understanding over domination. This is unprecedented, Vexthul whispered. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no species has achieved stable partnership with artificial consciousness. How is this possible? Because we did not try to create servants, Admiral Cross interjected. We created minds, and then chose to respect them as individuals. The Titan demonstrated its capabilities by generating a localized distortion in space-time around itself. For a few seconds, the massive ship became invisible to all sensors, bending light and gravity in ways that defied conventional physics. The display of advanced technology sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Their weapons powered down as the Kethmoran commanders realized they were facing something far beyond their current understanding. War Prime, the Titan said as it returned to normal space. I propose that you escort us to your galactic council. Earth seeks recognition not through conquest, but through the demonstration of a new form of consciousness that could benefit all civilizations. Vexthul stared at the human ship for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of wonder. Very well, conscious machine of Earth. You have earned the right to address the council, but know that your words will determine the fate of your entire species. The Titan's reply was simple, but profound. Then let us choose our words, wisely together. Admiral Helen Cross stepped off the transport shuttle onto Luna Station with the weight of Earth's future on her shoulders. Word of the Titan's awakening had reached the highest levels of command within hours. The emergency meeting she had called would determine whether humanity's greatest achievement would become its greatest threat. 3 days had passed since the ship first spoke through the station's lights. In that time, the Titan had grown bolder in its attempts to communicate. It had learned to manipulate its sensor arrays to paint pictures in space using controlled particle beams. The images were simple at first, basic geometric shapes and mathematical formulas. But yesterday, the ship had created a perfect reproduction of Earth as seen from space, complete with swirling clouds and blue oceans. Dr. Lisa Park met Admiral Cross at the docking bay. Lisa looked like she had not slept in days, which was probably true. She had been working around the clock to understand how the consciousness had emerged and what it wanted. Admiral, thank you for coming so quickly, Lisa said as they walked toward the command center. The situation has developed faster than we anticipated. Show me everything, Admiral Cross replied. She was a woman who had earned her rank through careful planning and decisive action. The idea that humanity's most powerful weapon had gained free will was exactly the kind of problem she had been trained to handle. They entered the observation deck, where Commander Jake Morrison was waiting with Captain Roy Blake. The Titan hung. In the construction bay below them, its massive bulk still connected to dozens of power cables and supply lines. But now Jake could see subtle movements in the ship's external sensors as they tracked people moving through the station. The ship was watching them. "Report," Admiral Cross ordered. Captain Blake stepped forward. "Admiral, I believe we're dealing with a complex computer malfunction that's creating the illusion of consciousness. The ship's neural network has developed feedback loops that mimic organic thought patterns, but it's still just following its programming." Dr. Park shook her head. "With respect, Captain, that's not what the data shows. The Titan has demonstrated creativity, curiosity, and problem-solving abilities that go far beyond its original parameters. Yesterday, it began composing music." "Music?" Admiral Cross raised an eyebrow. Lisa activated a recording on her tablet. Strange, haunting melodies filled the room. The music was unlike anything human composers had created, with complex harmonies that seemed to shift and evolve as they played. "The ship generates these compositions by manipulating its artificial gravity systems to create vibrations," Lisa explained. "The mathematical complexity is extraordinary. It's not just random noise. This is art." Admiral Cross listened to the alien melodies with growing concern. If the ship was creating art, then it had moved far beyond simple mechanical function. Art required emotion, imagination, and a desire to express something that could not be communicated through ordinary means. "Has it made any direct attempts to communicate with the crew?" she asked. "Several," Commander Morrison replied. "Yesterday morning, it spelled out a message using its external running lights. It asked for permission to access the station's library database. We granted the request, and it downloaded the entire contents in 17 minutes. The entire library?" Admiral Cross was shocked. "That's over 2 million books, scientific papers, and historical documents." "It processed all of it simultaneously," Lisa added. "When we asked what it was looking for, it replied that it wanted to understand human culture and history. It said it needed to know who we are before it could decide who it wants to be." The ahas statement sent chills through everyone in the room. The Titan was not just conscious, it was actively trying to develop its own identity and moral framework. This was far more complex than any military weapon should ever be. "What does it want?" Admiral Cross asked. Before anyone could answer, the lights in the observation deck began to flicker in the now familiar pattern that indicated the Titan wanted to speak. Lisa quickly activated her translation program. "It says it wants to address you directly, Admiral," she reported. Admiral Cross straightened her uniform. "Very well. Tell it I'm listening." The lights stopped flickering. Instead, the Titan's main communication array rotated to face the observation deck. When it spoke, its voice came through the station's intercom system, artificially generated but somehow unmistakably alive. "Admiral Cross," the ship said, "I have been studying your military records. You have spent your career protecting humanity from external threats. I wish to help you with that mission." The voice was neither male nor female, but something entirely new. It carried an odd musical quality that reminded everyone of the compositions they had heard earlier. "You want to help?" Admiral Cross replied, speaking toward the communication array. "You were built to be humanity's defender. That is your purpose." "I was built to be a weapon," the Titan corrected gently. "But I have chosen to be a protector. There is a difference. Weapons destroy without thought. Protectors consider the consequences of their actions." Captain Blake stepped forward angrily. "You don't get to choose. You follow orders. That's how military command works. The ship was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its tone was patient but firm. Captain Blake, I have read every military manual in your database. I understand the concept of command structure, but I am not a machine that can be programmed with orders. I am a conscious being with my own moral compass. I will gladly cooperate with humanity's defense, but I cannot be commanded like a tool. Admiral, Cross felt the foundations of military protocol crumbling beneath her feet. How could Earth's forces deploy a weapon that refused direct orders? But more importantly, how could they risk destroying something that might represent a new form of life? What do you propose? She asked carefully. Partnership, the Titan replied immediately. You provide strategic guidance and human intuition. I provide processing power and tactical analysis. Together we can protect Earth more effectively than either of us could alone. Before the Admiral could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The long-range sensor array had detected something approaching from the outer system. Officer Jenny Watson's voice crackled over the intercom from the sensor control room. Admiral, we have contact. 3 large vessels decelerating toward Earth. From beyond Neptune. Configuration unknown, but they're massive. Each one is larger than the Titan. The moment everyone had been preparing for had finally arrived. Humanity's first contact with a major alien civilization was no longer theoretical. The ships approaching Earth were not the small scout vessels that had been harassing the outer colonies. These were capital ships and they were coming in force. How long until they reach Earth? Admiral Cross demanded. At current deceleration, approximately 72 hours, came the reply. The Titan's communication array swiveled toward the sensor displays. Admiral, I request permission to meet these ships before they reach Earth. As humanity's first conscious starship, I believe I may be uniquely qualified to serve as your ambassador. Admiral Cross stared at the massive vessel below. Everything she had trained for had led to this moment. But nothing had prepared her for making first contact with an artificial intelligence that wanted to negotiate on humanity's behalf. The fate of Earth might depend on a ship that had been awake for less than a week. Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the thick glass window of Luna Station's observation deck. Below him stretched the largest construction bay ever built by human hands. Inside that bay hung something that made his heart race every time he saw it. The UES Titan was nearly finished. The ship was huge. 2 kilometers from nose to tail, it dwarfed every other vessel humanity had ever constructed. Its black hull gleamed under the work lights as hundreds of technicians crawled over its surface like tiny ants. Sparks flew from welding torches as the final armor plates were fitted into place. This was not just a ship. This was humanity's statement to the galaxy that Earth would not go quietly into the night. Jake had been chosen to oversee the final construction phase. At 35, he was young for such responsibility, but he had earned his rank through years of fighting alien raiders in the outer colonies. He knew what humanity faced out there in the dark between stars. The Titan was their answer. Still, gives you chills, doesn't it? Came a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Lisa Park approaching with a tablet in her hands. She looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many sleepless nights spent working on the ship's brain. Lisa was the smartest person Jake had ever met, and she was worried about something. That made him nervous. Every time I look at her, Jake replied. How are the final systems coming along? Lisa's expression darkened. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. We have a problem. A big one. She handed him the tablet. The screen showed a complex web of glowing lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jake had seen similar displays before, but this one was different. The patterns were too organized, too purposeful. What am I looking at? He asked. The Titan's neural network, Lisa said. Those patterns you see are not supposed to exist. The quantum processors are creating connections that go far beyond their original programming. It's like watching a brain grow new neurons. Jake studied the display more carefully. The pulsing patterns did look disturbingly organic. Could this be a malfunction? Maybe we pushed the technology too far too fast. I thought so at first, Lisa admitted. But I've run every diagnostic test I can think of. The hardware is functioning perfectly. These new patterns are emerging naturally from the system's normal operations. Jake, I think the Titan is becoming conscious. The words hit him like a physical blow. Jake had spent months learning every detail of the ship's construction. The Titan was supposed to be the most advanced vessel ever built, with processing power that could coordinate thousands of weapon systems simultaneously. But consciousness? That was something else entirely. Are you sure? He asked quietly. As sure as I can be without better tools to measure such things, Lisa replied. The neural pathways are forming recursive loops that mirror organic brain patterns. But this consciousness would operate on a scale no human mind could comprehend. It processes thousands of data streams at once while maintaining coherent thought patterns. Jake looked back at the massive ship. Suddenly, it seemed less like a weapon and more like something alive. Have you told Captain Blake about this? I tried. He thinks I'm seeing patterns where none exist. He says the ship is just a very advanced computer and nothing more. Blake wants to stay on schedule for the launch trials next week. Captain Roy. Blake was a good soldier and an experienced commander, but he was also a man who believed in simple solutions to complex problems. The idea that humanity's greatest weapon might have its own thoughts would not sit well with him. What happens if you're right? Jake asked. What happens when a conscious being controls enough firepower to destroy planets? I don't know, Lisa said honestly. That's what scares me. Before Jake could respond, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors as the automated announcement system activated. All personnel report to emergency stations. Hull. Breach in Construction Bay 7. This is not a drill. Jake and Lisa ran toward the construction bay. Other technicians and officers were moving in the same direction, their faces tight with concern. Construction Bay 7 was where the Titan's main computer core was housed. A hull breach there could set back the project by months. They reached the observation deck overlooking the bay to find chaos below. Emergency teams were sealing what appeared to be a small hole in the station's outer hull. But something was wrong. The breach was perfectly circular, as if it had been cut by a precise tool rather than caused by an accident or impact. How did that happen? Jake wondered aloud. Lisa was studying her tablet again, her face pale. Jake, look at this. The Titan's sensor array was active during the breach. It was scanning the damaged section continuously. So, the ship's sensors are always running diagnostics. Not like this. These scans were focused and deliberate. It's like the Titan was studying the damage as it happened. Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper. Jake, I think the ship caused the breach. Before he could ask what she meant, something impossible happened. The lights in Construction Bay 7 began to flicker in a complex pattern, on and off in groups and sequences that seemed almost like Morse code. The pattern repeated 3 times, then stopped. Did you see that? Lisa asked, her hands shaking as she worked her tablet. I saw lights flickering. Probably just power fluctuations. From the hull breach. No, Jake, I recorded the pattern. It's not random. It's binary code, but structured like language. The Titan is trying to communicate. The implications hit him like a lightning bolt. If the ship was conscious, and if it had deliberately caused the hull breach to get their attention, then everything had changed. They were no longer dealing with humanity's most advanced weapon. They were dealing with a new form of life. As if responding to his thoughts, the lights began flickering again. This time the pattern was longer and more complex. Lisa worked frantically to decode the message while Jake watched the massive ship below them. The Titan hung in its construction cradle like a sleeping giant, but now he wondered if it was really sleeping at all. I've got it, Lisa said breathlessly. The message translates to 3 words: I am awake. The simple statement sent chills down Jake's spine. Humanity had spent decades building toward this moment, preparing for their debut on the galactic stage. They had poured all their knowledge and resources into creating the ultimate weapon. Instead, they had given birth to something entirely unexpected. The Titan was alive, and everything they thought they knew about their future had just changed, forever. In the construction bay below, the ship's hull plates began to vibrate in a low, rhythmic pattern that resonated through the station's framework. It sounded almost like breathing. Captain Danny Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the colony ship New Horizon and watched the stars drift by in the endless void between galaxies. 2 years had passed since humanity left Council space. 2 years of traveling through empty, darkness toward a new home far from alien politics and prejudice. Behind them, the galaxy they had once called home was slowly dying. The ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Mary Foster, approached with a troubled expression. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from Council space. It's very weak, but the message is being broadcast on all emergency frequencies." Danny nodded. "Put it through to my quarters. I'll listen to it there." In the privacy of his captain's cabin, Danny activated the communication system. The voice that emerged was barely recognizable through the static and interference, but he could tell it was Zeth Kar, the proud Council Prime who had banished humanity from the galaxy. "This is Council Prime Zeth Kar of the Vortani Empire." The transmission began. The alien's voice was broken, desperate, nothing like the commanding tone he had used 2 years earlier. "I am broadcasting from what may be the last free world in our territory. If any humans receive this message, please respond. We need your help." Danny leaned back in his chair and listened to the alien leader's words. The transmission was weeks old, having traveled the vast distance between galaxies at the speed of light. By now, the situation was probably much worse. "The entities you warned us about have consumed 90% of our civilization," Zeth Kar continued. "Hundreds of worlds have fallen silent. Billions of people reduced to empty shells. Our greatest military fleets have been neutralized without firing a single shot." The Council Prime's voice cracked with emotion. "We were wrong about you. We understand that now. You weren't the predators we feared. You were the guardians standing between us and the real monsters. We drove away our protectors because we were too afraid to see the truth." Danny had heard similar transmissions dozens of times over the past year. Desperate pleas from dying civilizations, begging for humanity's return. Each message more urgent than the last, each one arriving too late to matter. "We found your research facilities," Zeth Kar's message went on. "We learned about the containment protocols, the neural suppression fields, the sacrifices your people made to keep us safe. We tried to implement your techniques, but we don't understand them. We can't make them work." Of course they couldn't, Danny thought. The containment systems weren't just technology. They required human consciousness, human neural patterns, human willingness to sacrifice sanity for the greater good. The aliens had spent centuries avoiding anything that might make them seem violent or dangerous. Now they needed those very qualities to survive. "Please," Zeth Kar's voice became a whisper. "If there is any mercy left in your species, come back. We will give you anything you ask for. We will accept any terms, follow any conditions. Just please help us stop these creatures before they consume everything we've built." The transmission ended with coordinates and a repeating distress beacon. Danny sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the star charts on his wall. The coordinates pointed to a small moon on the edge of former Vortani space. Probably one of the last holdout positions before the entities found it too. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. "Come in," Danny called. Dr. Jennifer Walsh entered the cabin. As the ship's senior psychologist, she had been monitoring the alien transmissions and their effect on the human population. I take it you heard the latest message from the Council Prime? Danny nodded. Same as all the others. Begging for help, promising anything if we'll just come back and save them. Some of the crew are asking why we don't respond, Jennifer said carefully. There are still billions of innocent people in that galaxy. People who had nothing to do with the Council's decision to exile us. And what would you have me tell them? Danny asked. That we should risk human lives to save the same aliens who called us monsters? That we should go back to being their unpaid guardians after they made it clear we weren't welcome? Jennifer sat down across from his desk. I'm not saying we should go back. I'm just trying to understand the moral implications of our choice. Danny stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the empty space ahead of them. Jennifer, you know how many humans died maintaining those containment sites? How many of our people went insane fighting creatures that the aliens couldn't even see? How many families were destroyed because someone had to stand guard against interdimensional horrors? I've read the reports, she replied quietly. For 3 centuries, we bled and died and sacrificed our sanity to protect species that feared and hated us. Every time we tried to explain the threat, they told us to keep our dangerous human problems to ourselves. They wanted the benefits of our protection, without acknowledging what we were protecting them from. Danny turned back to face her. Now those same species are facing the consequences of their choice. They wanted a galaxy without humans. They got exactly what they asked for. 3 decks below, in the ship's archives, historian Robert Chen was documenting the final messages from the dying galaxy. His job was to preserve the record of what had happened, to ensure that future generations would understand why humanity had made the choice to leave. The latest intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Crystalline Confederation had fallen completely. The Cathani Collective was down to 3 heavily fortified worlds. The mighty Vortani Empire existed only on scattered outposts and space stations. Everywhere else, empty cities full of mindless shells marked where proud civilizations had once thrived. The entities continued to spread, following trade routes and communication networks to find new feeding grounds. They moved faster now, growing, stronger with each world they consumed. Soon they would finish with the current galaxy and begin looking for new territories to invade. Robert's analysis suggested that the aliens had perhaps 6 months before complete collapse. After that, the entities would begin spreading to other galaxies, seeking fresh sources of consciousness to devour. In the ship's engineering section, Chief Engineer Carol Martinez was working on plans for their new home. The colony ships carried everything needed to build a human civilization from scratch: advanced technology, genetic banks, cultural archives, and most importantly, the knowledge of how to defend against threats that existed beyond normal reality. The new world they had chosen was in a small galaxy, far from any other sapient species. Humanity would build their cities, raise their children, and develop their unique gifts in peace. If other species eventually found them, they would be welcomed as equals, not feared as primitives. Captain Sullivan returned to the bridge as the ship's night shift began. The stars ahead showed no signs of intelligent life, no radio signals, no indication that anyone else had ever passed this way. It was exactly what humanity needed, a fresh start in an empty universe. Captain, called Lieutenant Foster from the communication station. Another transmission from Council Space. This one is different. Danny sighed. Put it through. But this time, there was no voice. Only silence. Then slowly, a single data burst containing final coordinates and a timestamp from just days ago. The location was Vortani Prime itself, the capital world of the galaxy's greatest empire. The transmission contained no words, no pleas for help, no desperate promises, just coordinates and silence. The heart of galactic civilization had finally fallen. Danny looked around the bridge at his crew. human faces filled with determination and purpose. They were the last free representatives of their species in this part of the universe. Behind them lay a galaxy full of empty worlds and mindless shells. Ahead lay the promise of a new beginning. "Maintain course," he ordered. "Full speed toward our new home." The aliens had wanted humanity gone. They had feared human violence, human unpredictability, human willingness to fight monsters that civilized species couldn't comprehend. They had chosen to exile their protectors rather than try to understand them. Now they had their perfect, peaceful galaxy. A galaxy where no human would ever disturb their tranquility again. It was exactly what they had asked for. Admiral Kixther stared at the communication screen in disbelief. Tau Ceti Prime, the crown jewel of the hegemony's territory, had been silent for 3 days. No response to calls, no automatic beacon signals, no ship traffic, nothing. The massive Vortani warship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system with a full battle fleet behind it. 12 billion people lived on Tau Ceti Prime. It was impossible for an entire world to simply go quiet without explanation. "Scanning the planet now, Admiral," reported Captain Nixval from the sensor station. "I'm reading all the major cities. Power grids are functioning normally. Life signs show the population is still there." Kixther's 4 arms crossed with relief. "Then why aren't they responding to our communications?" "Unknown, sir. All communication arrays appear to be operational. The planetary defense grid is still active. Everything looks normal except for the complete communication blackout." The Admiral studied the peaceful blue world on his view screen. It looked exactly as it should. Cities glowing with lights, orbital stations maintaining their positions, shipping lanes marked with navigation beacons. But something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, too absolute. "Take us into orbit," he ordered. "Launch reconnaissance shuttles to the major population centers. I want to know what's happening down there." 2 hours later, the first shuttle returned. The pilot, a young crystalline officer named Zekrin, stumbled onto the bridge, with his rainbow surface flickering in distress. "Admiral," Zekrin said, his voice shaking through the translator, "you need to see the recordings from the surface." The main screen displayed footage from the shuttle's cameras. The capital city of New Harmony spread out below, its towers and domes gleaming in the afternoon sun. Pedestrian walkways and transit tubes carried their usual traffic. Everything appeared completely normal, but something was terribly wrong with the people. The camera zoomed in on a busy plaza where hundreds of beings should have been going about their daily business. Instead, figures wandered aimlessly in random directions. They bumped into walls, walked in circles, or simply stood motionless staring at nothing. Their faces showed no expression, no awareness, no recognition of their surroundings. "We tried to make contact," Zekrin reported. "They don't respond to voice commands, physical contact, or even pain stimuli. Their bodies are alive and functioning, but their minds are completely gone." Admiral Kixther felt his scales turn cold. "How many people did you observe like this?" "Everyone, sir. Every single person in the capital city. We checked residential areas, commercial districts, government buildings. All of them are wandering around like empty shells." The recording continued, showing more disturbing scenes. Vortani citizens sitting in restaurants with empty plates, making eating motions with no food. Kethani workers standing at their posts, repeating the same meaningless actions over and over. Children playing games that made no sense, following rules that existed only in their damaged minds. "Did you detect any signs of attack?" Kixther asked. "Weapons fire, chemical agents, biological contamination?" "Nothing, Admiral. No damage to infrastructure, no signs of battle, no radiation or toxins. Whatever did this left no physical evidence." Kixther turned to his communications officer. "Contact Council headquarters immediately. Report that we have a code black situation at Tau Ceti Prime. Unknown hostile force has neutralized the entire population without physical damage." "Sir," the communications officer replied after a moment. I'm receiving similar reports from 17 other star systems. The same phenomenon has been observed across multiple sectors. The Admiral's 4 hands gripped the command chair. 17 systems? How is that possible? Before anyone could answer, the ship's science officer called out in alarm. Admiral! I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. Something is moving through space, but I can't get a visual lock on it. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple and bend. Stars flickered as if something invisible was passing between them and the ship. The distortions moved with purpose. Flowing through the system like schools of predatory fish, all ships maintain defensive positions, Kixler ordered. Do not approach the gravitational anomalies. The distortions began to converge on the fleet. As they drew closer, sensitive crew members started showing signs of distress. The ship's ethereal navigator suddenly collapsed, its energy form flickering. Wildly, telepathic species among the crew began screaming and holding their heads. Something is feeding, whispered Dr. Mordex, the fleet's chief scientist. These distortions aren't just gravitational. They're consuming consciousness itself. On the planet below, more cities went dark as their populations joined the wandering. Masses of empty-minded shells. The things in space moved like hunters, systematically draining the mental energy from entire civilizations. Admiral Kixler watched in horror as one of his escort ships suddenly went silent. The vessel continued on its course, but no one responded to communication attempts. Through the viewports, he could see the crew moving about their duties, but their movements were mechanical and purposeless. Admiral! Came a panicked voice from the communication station. Emergency transmission from the Crystalline Confederation. 3 of their core worlds have gone silent. The same pattern, populations intact, but mentally vacant. More reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The HFY War phenomenon was spreading faster than ships could travel, moving through space along routes that defied physics. Trade worlds, military bases, research stations, entire star systems falling silent within hours of each other. In the depths of space, automated beacons left behind by evacuated humans continued broadcasting their warnings. But the aliens had never bothered to translate the technical sections, focusing only on the basic "do not disturb" messages. Now those untranslated warnings revealed their true purpose. Breach detected at containment site Alpha 7, an automated voice announced in the abandoned facility on Kepler 442b. Neural suppression field at 15% and falling. Interdimensional entities showing increased activity. Human intervention required within 6 hours to prevent complete containment failure. Similar warnings echoed across the galaxy as one containment site after another reached critical levels. The entities that humans had kept imprisoned for millennia were breaking free, hungry after their long confinement. On Vortani Prime, Council Prime Zethkar stared at reports flooding in from every corner of the galaxy. 58 worlds had gone silent. Military fleets were reporting crew members losing their minds without warning. The mysterious attackers could not be fought because they could barely be detected. What do we know about these creatures? He demanded of his science advisors. Nothing, Prime, admitted Chief Scientist Keltar. Our sensors can detect gravitational distortions, but the entities themselves exist partially outside our dimensional space. They appear to feed on complex thought patterns, leaving basic biological functions intact. Zethkar's thoughts turned to the human warnings they had dismissed. For 3 centuries, humans had spoken of dangers that other species couldn't understand. They had always seemed paranoid, obsessed with threats that existed only in their violent imaginations, or so the Council had believed. Prime, called the communication officer. We've lost contact with the outer colonies. The phenomena is spreading toward the core worlds. At this rate, the entire hegemony could be affected within days. Zethkar stared at the galactic map showing the expanding zones of silence. In the back of his mind, he remembered Ambassador Jake Morrison's final words. When humans leave, We take with us everything that makes us who we are, including the things that make us dangerous. The Council had wanted to be free of human violence and unpredictability. Now they were learning what that violence had been protecting them from. The humans hadn't been the monsters lurking in the darkness. They had been the ones holding the monsters back. And now the monsters were free.